Okay, this is the Hayden Institute of Education, Diploma of Mental Health, and tonight it's second session of two. First one was last week. This is the last session of this module, and then we've got another module next week. Implement recovery-oriented approaches to complexity. So basically, we're looking at putting programs in to mental health diploma, putting programs in that focus on recovery. And the complexity, as I mentioned last week, complexity is not in the person, but it's the issues that are aligning with it, the comorbidity, the co-occurring issues. So I'll just start with the acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Hayden Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. So just to start, I'll just go over the housekeeping. Same thing as every week, really. It's cameras on, just so we know who everyone is. Just so we're all on the same page, I guess. Cameras on, microphones off. Sometimes the interference and the feedback from microphones and speakers can be a little bit off-putting and distracting for people trying to study. If there's children or animals in the background shouting along, then it can be a bit difficult. So that's why we have microphones on. Some people don't realize with cameras off, it helps people hide behind a camera, and it's a bit uncomfortable for other people with a camera. So that's why we focus on cameras and microphones. Class break times, we have with a few hours of study, we need a break every hour, really. So it's going to be 10 minutes, 10-minute break at 7 o'clock, 10-minute break at 8 o'clock, ready for the evening. We'd love to hear from you, but it sounded horrible. Sorry. No, we'd love to hear from you. The thing is, so that people don't talk over each other, there's a reactions icon underneath the video screen. There's shortcuts to all these as well, key codes, so that you can just click on it and then everybody can tell who has put their hand up first. Respectful relationships, we're trying to be respectful for everybody. Be mindful and kind with your words and respect the opinion of others. We're all learners and in this together. That's why we're here, all studying, learning. Everybody, all of us. No smoking or vaping or drinking alcohol on camera. It's just like a TAFE class or a staff meeting at work. Doesn't happen there, so we don't do it here. And that can be because of the legislation, and also because of it could be a trigger for other people. Could come on here and think that they're not expecting to see somebody using something that they're trying to give up. And finally, be kind to yourself. You've got to make sure that in everything that you're doing, like giving out to family, spending time with work, spending time in education, spending time doing all the things that need to be done. You've got to look after yourself and be kind to yourself. So you've got to put back into yourself, whether that's in the weekend, whether that's during the week, morning, afternoon. Just make sure that you're rebuilding yourself up. Now, just to start, so the main thing is that we are studying this module, CHCMHS010, Implement Recovery-Oriented Approaches to Complexity. Now, like I said, this is the second week. Next week, we are doing this one, number 13, not number 10, but don't do that. CHCMHS010, implementing trauma-informed care. So this module is implementing recovery approaches. The next module is implement trauma-informed care. It's a lot of implementation, a lot of different programs that are needed. If we're looking at a holistic, complex set of issues, that might be one program for a client, family, group of people. But then a completely different one might be trauma related. So while we're always ready to work in trauma informed care, and we always have to be working from that standpoint, if it's not significant, then we might be falling back onto simply being focused on recovery. And while that is complex enough, if we bring in trauma, that's kind of the difference that we're looking at. But that's next week, not tonight. I might as well jump onto the slides. So primarily, we are Am I recording? I am recording, okay. So, mental health legislation and policy frameworks. Responsible for managing and providing health services, mental health legislation for each state and territory. You don't have to, sometimes it's so different just across the border. You don't have to know like all of the state territory legislation. If you're in Victoria, you don't need to know the state legislation for Northern Territory or Western Australia, unless you can have a placement there. That could be something that you might need to do. But generally, all of the legislation is just going to be based around where you're working, where your agency is. If it's an online agency, then you could be looking at needing to know legislation in another area, but that would be a completely different type of thing. We're just focusing on the area that you're working in, and the clients that you're dealing with in that state territory. So it must meet requirements of relevant Mental Health Act. Workers must work within guidelines. So the guidelines, obviously legislation guidelines, which are from the state territory governance, and then also the guidelines from the agency that we're working for. Now, I'll give you this link. I don't want to watch it now. Oh, because it's broken anyway. It's a broken link. All right. Completely ignore that. So mental health service standards, they promote quality of life. This is the standards that we work with and we work for. So like standards of like duty of care, the standards of dignity of risk, they're promoting quality of life. That's partly why we're subscribing to them. Support sustained recovery, involve consumers in decisions about treatment, ensure consumers have a nominated carer, not career. Ensure consumers have a nominated carer, which is obviously important for anybody that's accessing that service, and recognize individual needs and capacities and tailor treatment to meet these, which means in recovery orientated support, every client might well be slightly different. Generally, everybody has the same type of services. Everybody has the same type of expectations, but in the end, every individual client is going to be slightly different. There might be more or less trauma. There might be more or less support individually for the client. More or less support mechanism. Like one person's support mechanism might be really, really strong, and then another person's might be really, really low. So we're always mixing it up and trying to figure out what each person has. So we're working within policy framework, obviously. The policy could be the policy that is in our service that we are working for, and if we change different services, we're still governed by the same state territory legislation, but the policy might be slightly different. So we're still working to the same law, but two agencies are going to be looking at it in a very, very different way, which is not a major deal. But moving agency to agency, you find that two different agencies are doing the same law with the same clients in a very different way. And then we are trying to make sure that we follow policy procedure, as well as not rocking the boat and saying, well, the other agency did it a different way. You're probably going to be told, well, go back to the other agency then, if you don't like the way we're doing it. And that's unfortunately, like, if you move into a new agency that does a different way, then the agencies are still following the same legislation, yeah, but slightly different. All still guided by policy frameworks, and the frameworks are a guide. Implemented values, principles, and legislation, got to make decisions, got to address the issue, and based on how a government or organisation intends to implement it. Excuse me. Okay, we'll look at this one. Oh, it works. That's a novelty. That's great. I'll put it in the chat. It's easier to do it. I'll put it in the chat, and you just click on it, and then we'll all watch it in our own time. And it's only a minute and a half, so it's pretty quick. There we go. Okay, so we're just after looking at practice standards and the codes of practice, ethical and boundary points. We're looking at researching the 6 points that I mentioned. That's the research that's happening at the moment. Andrew, yeah, go for it.
Dignity and respect. Do you want to keep going, Dwayne, or?
Yeah, go for it. Do it, yeah. Go for it.
Okay. Partnership and communication. Evaluation of recovery and wellness. Uniqueness of the individual, empowerment and person-centered care. Real choices that balance duty of care with dignity of risk. And support for rights and positive attitudes towards individuals and their carers.
Cool. Did everybody else get that? Did anybody else get it reworded or worded slightly different or anything like that? Must be exactly the same as you, Andrew. That's what I reckon. All right. So just to move on, when in quite a lot of assessments, you'll have talk of rights and responsibilities. It's a common question about the rights and responsibilities of workers and employers and clients. I don't know whether it's going to say clients next, is it? Yeah, consumers. So the rights and responsibilities, if sometimes the question might be a bit vague, and it'll talk about rights and responsibilities in the community services sector, and it's not really clear who it's on about. It's on about everyone, because the worker, the staff that are meeting the clients, they've got both rights and responsibilities, but so is our employer, the agencies that we're working for, and so is the client that's coming in. And it's easy to think that like an assessment question, it's just focusing on the client. It's not. It's focusing on the client. It's focusing on the staff that are working with them, and it's focusing on the employer that's providing the service in the industry. If you dragged it out a little bit, it's focusing on the family of the clients as well. Like it's focusing on when we get into work health and safety, the next page, it's focusing on the safety of the general public who are working next door to us in a different office. It's talking about the other staff that are in the waiting room, that are in reception. It's talking about any other clients that are coming into the office. So it's not just talking about the client, it's talking about anybody affected with the client. It's talking about staff that are working with the client. And then it's talking about the employers that are employing the staff. So being aware of respecting the rights of others, providing feedback, communicating openly and honestly, for work health and safety, have good self-care practices to minimize stress. And again, in any industry, who's responsible for work health and safety? Every single member of the agency, of the factory, of the workforce. Everybody's responsible for work health and safety. And then if you go to a warehouse, if you went to a warehouse and you're a client going to buy something from a warehouse, you also would be responsible for work health and safety too, even in the warehouse of the service that you go into. So for work health and safety, yes, the managers of Anglicare are responsible for everybody's work health and safety. So are the staff that are providing the service, but so are the clients that are going into the service. Everybody's responsible for work health and safety. Not just for their own work health and safety, but for other people's work health and safety as well. So I have a right to a safe workspace. I have a right to go to a safe workplace, but a client also has a right to come to a safe agency service provided for them, which means it goes both ways. It's both of our responsibility. And then we've got duty of care and dignity of risk. They don't contradict each other. They both blend together. So duty of care is reasonably, there's the key word. So legal obligation based on common law applies to everybody, takes care not to cause reasonably foreseeable harm to those around us, which means if we took the reasonable word out, it would be unrealistic. It would be untenable. I don't know whether I know what that means. It would be pretty impossible to take care not to cause foreseeable harm to those around us. And we can't see all of the perspectives. But when we're talking reasonably, we're saying that most people in the industry of community services, if they would react like that, then that's an appropriate response. And then with dignity of risk, it's in connection with duty of care issues. We're not we're not always able to protect people from themselves, and we're not necessarily expecting to protect people from themselves when I'm my own worst enemy, whether that's with medication, whether that's with substances, because I'm my own worst enemy. People can't protect me from myself, and it's wrong to do that. So consequences of actions and behaviour, they're mine. Um, and it's difficult working in community services when we're working closely with somebody, we can feel partly responsible for somebody's actions and behaviour. Even if we only feel a tiny bit responsible for their actions or behaviour, if their action or behaviour is huge, we feel a bigger responsibility. So if we feel partly responsible for a small thing, we'll get over it pretty quickly. But if something huge happens to them and we feel partly responsible, that's something that we're going to need to work on quite a lot with every person that we feel partly responsible for. So the duty of care is only reasonable. It's only a reasonable level of expectation. So protecting people, definitely, looking after people, caring for people, but we have to figure out where the boundary is that empties and draws from ourselves and not puts us at risk. So again, it's learning from experience. We don't know that straight away. It's not. It's an impossible expectation to think that we can know that from early on. And we grow and we learn what a reasonable level of care is and how to respect somebody's dignity of risk. Yes, there we go. So informed consent is another thing that we're working with. We have all the important information, making choices and decisions, consenting to something, making an informed decision. So when the client comes in and we're talking to them, if we haven't let them know everything that they need to, if we haven't informed them of everything that they need for the work that we're going to be doing with them, then we haven't informed them properly and we're going to be liable for anything that happens. Because if they weren't informed properly, they couldn't consent to it, which means if they can't consent to it legitimately, then we're in a legal problem. They need to be able to understand what they're consenting to. So I guess some people would try and explain and say, okay, I've explained that verbally. There's the document. I need you to sign this. Now, when you've signed it, that's saying that you understand everything. So we can carry on now. And then when they come back and say, no, I didn't understand what it meant when you were talking about CBT or when you were talking about passing or mandatory reporting or something like that, then we're liable because they didn't understand. And that's the way the law works as well, unfortunately. So we've got to make sure that somebody understands what they're consenting to. They've got to make the choices and decisions. They've got to have all the relevant information, and then they've got to sign to show they understand it, which means it starts to be really, really important if we think you really don't understand what I'm explaining to you here. And obviously, there's certain people that might not understand, like a senior person with dementia or cognitive dysfunction. We could guess probably that they might not understand what we're talking to them about when we're talking to them about informed consent. Which means we need somebody else quite often to give consent for them, or somebody that's young, somebody that's under 18 and is unable to give consent legally. If they're beyond under a certain age, then they're not going to be able to consent legally to certain things, or with NDIS clients, some people with cognitive impairment means that they might not be able to understand. So we've got to watch out and make sure that if the client isn't necessarily going to understand, who can we get to vouch for them or consent for them? I think most often, how do you find the learner guide? I'll throw it on in a sec. Sorry, answering the question that you've asked. If you go and accelerate, you can actually type in the module code and it takes you straight to the learner guide that you want. So it's CHCMHS010. So if you type that in, that should be able to take you to it. But if you can't find it, I'll put it in the chat in a second. The most common things of problems with consent is in AOD work. Like if somebody's incapacitated because they're inebriated, or they've had too many, or they've had too much, then they can't consent for themselves if they've been doing that. So we've got to wait till they're sober. Also medication. If somebody's too out of it on medication, then if there isn't going to be a point when we know, like tomorrow morning, will it be better? Or this afternoon, can you come back this afternoon and sign the documents? Or it's a heavy dose of medication for a few days. Okay, well, let's postpone the appointment. And once this medication's settled a bit, we'll sort a few things out then. If it's if it's long-term medication, then maybe they're going to need somebody to vouch for them and like to sign legal documents if they literally can't sign it for themselves. Yeah, child protection as well. Slightly different for each state and territory, but as I said, you've just got to know the state and territory legislation for your state and territory. It narrows it down basically to if you're working in community services or health, you're probably going to be mandatory reporting if you see anything. It's the main differences would be how you report it and where and who you report it to. So it could be in a member of your staff or working with you might be the key mandatory reporter and you pass everything on to them. In one agency, it could be like that. And then in another agency, you have to do all of the work yourself. You might have to make the calls, get on the internet, hunt it down. So depending on which agency you're in, then you're going to have to figure out how to do it. And you'll be told because it's a legal issue. Elder abuse as well comes under that. It's the same blue card in Victoria, I think it's called. It's the same governance that means that whether it's child protection, somebody at risk, like elder abuse, self-harm, suicide ideation, all of these things, okay, we need to report these things. Privacy, confidentiality, and disclosure. It's essential for building trust and relationships. They don't disclose private or confidential information about clients to a third party. So a third party could be GP, it could be psychiatrist, it could be mental health unit, and all of these places are important places. But if the client hasn't given us an agreed, signed approval to pass the information on, we're not allowed to do it. Even police, somebody could call up wherever we work and say that they are police officer, whoever, and need details of so-and-so, and you need to send them through legally. If we don't know that officer, if we don't know that police local area command, then we have a right to challenge that and say, nah, you need to I need to check with my supervisor. You probably need to send me an email um, and say who you are, rather than me just giving client details over the phone. The only way that we unquestionably pass client details over is really a court subpoena. And when we've subpoenaed things, then it's just like, all right, fair enough. When the court subpoena says we want all your client files on Dwayne Rate for his whole history of when he's been working with your service, and the client file goes back 6 or 7 years. That's a lot of information that we have to get into the subpoena. Um, so it's a bit, sometimes in a lot of agencies they've got one person that will do all that, and they'll go for weeks or months, and they've got cruisy caseload, not a lot of work to do, and then suddenly they get a subpoena come in. It's like, oh my gosh, no, really? Because they've got a lot of work on their hands to dig through everything. Um, the records management, again, works with it. Meet requirements of Privacy Act 1988. How do you collect, store, use, and maintain clients' records? In assessments, there'll be the question about hard copy and soft copy. So if it's hard copy, then it's going to be in a client file, in a locked drawer, in a locked room. Not all staff don't have a key to the filing cabinet or the file room. It'll probably just be senior manager or senior HR department, senior admin that will be going in and out of that room. Even a staff member wanting old details for a client of their own will have to request certain information so that all of the hard copy files are kept safe. So that's the standard procedure. And then software, soft copies, it's in a client file that might be password protected, in a client management system that will be password protected, on a laptop or computer that will be password protected. And when you're logging into that, I'll be able to see my own files of my own clients, but I won't be able to see your files of your clients, and vice versa. The GP might be able to log in, but he would only be able to see all of his own files of everyone with regards to health data, but he wouldn't be able to see my notes or your notes that you've made for your clients. And then again, a psychiatrist might log into the same client management system as well, and he wouldn't be able to see the notes that I've made unless I've opened them up for like viewing of everybody else. So a database that's locked down on a need to know basis, really, because not everybody needs to know everything. So with further reading, there's a link for information about that. That's MHS Australia. I'll just stop this and give you a bit of a link. You need to know the legal stuff, really, even if you only see it once or twice. It's as long as it sticks in your head, or even if you don't read it now, and you just remember that when you've got an assessment, you're going to go straight to it and think, "Oh yeah, I know where that is." Um, Actually, I'm just going to pause here. I'm going to throw the what is it, learner guide. Won't be a second. Okay, I'm just going to bring it into the chat. So if you haven't got it, you can download it just by clicking on it in the chat. There you go. Um, all right. I just wanted to split up into breakout rooms for a little bit. Just to just answer a couple of questions. So I'll just show you the assessment. There's only 2 assessments, so it's pretty straightforward. Oh no, I've closed it down. I'll get back to it in a minute. Oh, good. It's all right, Joanne. Panic over. Um, I'll just carry on a little bit longer. Uh, there we go. So with complex, I've not, don't know why that's doing that. I don't even know what it says. It's like guess, fill in the words. It's not an assessment. Um, okay. With complex cases, so we're looking at the complexity. That is the whole point of the module. The complexity of the not the complexity of the person, the complexity of a lot of different factors, I guess, clashing together. The person may need access to a range of services from different organizations and sectors. So the key will be to figure out um, with complex cases, then like you might want to refer them to there and there and there and there and get a referral for there and get them this referral and a leaflet for here and a leaflet for here. We don't want to overwhelm somebody. It's like what's out of all of the things that are going on for the complexity, what would be maybe the, depending on who they are, you might get them 2 or 3 things to work on or to focus and a referral for there. If they're struggling a little bit, it might only be one thing. You might have a list of 10 things that you want to refer them to, but really practically, they might not be able to cope with that. And it's just one thing. What's the most important thing that they need to do right now? If they've got a maybe bigger capacity, you might think, okay, I could get them in contact with these 2 referral agencies, give them 3 more leaflets, and that's a few things to work on over the next few days. Next week, I'll give them the other lot and we'll work on the rest. But like it said with experience on the other slide, you've got to figure out with each person um, where to go now, what the best thing to start with is, and the most important thing for them really, uh, coordinating multiple services and supports. Quite often, it's going to be you're going to be the agency that's connecting with GP and then psychiatrist, maybe a mental health unit they've just come out of, or maybe a mental health unit they're progressively going into, or it's a mental health unit that they're in and out of quite a lot, or an aged care place, something like more permanent. You might be facilitating financial issues or homeless issues. quite often you're going to be coordinating it, or you're going to be leading a team of somebody that is going to be doing that. With a diploma, it's with the diploma that you're studying, it's aiming more at you having a team of people that are doing this. So that's kind of what you're expecting to be doing, really. When we say complexity, again, it's on the government page when they designed the course. They're not saying that the people are complex. It's made that quite clear that that's what we're meant to be focusing on. It's not that the person is complex. It's saying that the coexisting needs or conditions. Mental health could be a long-term mental health condition with short-term mental health conditions clashing, and then maybe chronic physical conditions, all working together with underlying needs or issues, relationship problems, family problems, all beneath the surface, and then all building together to pinpoint one problem that's going on right now. Yeah, let's look at this case study for a couple of minutes. Okay, it's Graham in section 3.1. Now, because you've got a placement and you don't have many role plays, then we've got to get a few role plays in somewhere. All right, just a bit of debrief and what did you come up with? For Graham, 40 years old, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was in his teens. He's had several admissions to psychiatric hospitals. He uses illegal drugs and has been involved in criminal offences to obtain money to buy them. He's currently serving a custodial sentence for robbery and drug dealing, continues to use illicit drugs which are available within the prison. So, how might Graham's mental illness have led him to try illegal drugs? If you want to scribble it in the chat, you can put it in the chat, if whatever you came up with, or just jump on. Yes, Caroline. Excuse me.
I think for this one, Graham may have used the illegal drugs as a medication to him, like for coping from anxiety, depression, or hallucination. So, yeah. So
that's Penny and Caroline and Kim all came up with basically self-medication.
Yeah, it's just a self-medication.
Yeah, true. And Brooke as well. So the third one, jump down to the third one. How might his imprisonment affect his mental health and his continuing to drug use or self-medicate, if we're calling it that now? So what's going to be the link between his imprisonment and the using that he's doing?
Because he's with, like, it kind of perpetuates itself. It's like a never-ending cycle. He's around people that are doing the same thing, and he's got no positive role models.
Yeah, definitely.
And also for this one, that's my thinking. for this one, maybe imprisonment, it will going to be worsen Graham's mental health due to isolation, like stress, trauma, and lack of tailored like physiatric care. Yeah, and it may also limit his access to appropriate mental health and substance
Yeah,
use.
definitely.
Yeah, treatment.
So perpetuating it, all linking it together. His
Yeah,
imprisonment is going to be linked, and Penny's saying it's like the anxiety of being in prison, increasing the desperation and
yes,
making things worse in
yeah.
there. So the last one, this is where we all come in, I guess, mainly. What services is Graham going to need when he's released from prison? This is huge, really.
Housing support, that's the first thing.
Housing, yeah. What else?
Employment
Anyone?
agency that works with people,
So,
ex-offenders.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
And
there's
also,
two.
yeah, you also need mental health services like physiatric and counseling or peer support groups.
So
Yeah,
there's four things straight away. Quickly,
yeah,
we've got four.
yeah.
Anything else? So he's schizophrenia, long-term mental health condition, drug use,
Employment.
so yes, employment.
Yeah.
Social life is really important to him.
Yes.
He's connected negatively to certain relationships. So perfect time and Penny, yeah, the community connection. He's got negative community connection. He needs positive community connection.
He could maybe
Um,
try places like AA or NA or something like that where he'd
Perfect.
meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's like could be doing two things at the same time, some sort of
Yeah.
like the connection and the AOD support.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is going to need family support, Juliet, because even if his family are really, really supportive, they of his recovery, not necessarily of his AOD use, but even if they're really, really supportive, they he might have cut them off or they might have cut him off. So he's going to need some sort of family connection, like whether that's parent or figures rather than parents, and it's like sibling figures rather than actual siblings that he's got. He's going to need something there as a strength, support. All right, I'll jump back to the slides anyway. So the slides you usually get a recording, a pre-recording of the class with all the slides and the YouTube links, so you can read over and go over all this in your own time. It says session summary, but it's not. I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. Come on. So, contributing factors. When we're looking at issues of complexity, then when we pull all them apart, like you just did with Graham, all the things that Graham's dealing with, each little factor, each little strand is a contributing factor. So when we've got specific economic factors, like to do with finances, employment, bills, life still goes on, and Graham, for example, is still going to need to provide some sort of sustenance. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent now. I can remember working with a young guy. He was about 22, and he had he had schizophrenia, so it was similar to Graham, but he was just a young guy, and he wasn't stealing, he wasn't robbing. He had a caseworker because of his mental health and learning difficulties. And basically, what I had to do was help him budget his week, trying to account for all the food that he needed, his rent, and his pot use, and try and make sure that he was getting his Centrelink every couple of weeks, and he was blowing all his Centrelink on pot as soon as he got it. So we literally had to sit down and try and help him budget for his pot, making sure that he still had food for rent, money for he still had money for food, and he still had money for rent, even though his caseworker for his learning difficulties was advising him that he shouldn't be using pot. But for mental health workers and AOD workers, we're not parents, and if that's what they're wanting to do, the biggest problem is the fact that he's not eating and he's not budgeting really well. And eventually, over a few weeks, we managed to get him to a budget that he was able to stick to, where he wasn't using as much pot. He was budgeting for food and rent. And he originally came in because he knew he was using too much pot in the first place. So it was trying to equal it all out and make sure that in the long run, he wasn't messing his life up any more than right now, when he came into the service in the first place. So even going against what we instinctively feel like we want to do, we might end up trying to help somebody budget for their pot or their ice use and say, okay, well, if it's that important, let's make sure that harm minimization, we're reducing as much harm as we can and making sure that you are you're going to be safe as much as possible. We've got to make sure you're safe and healthy as you possibly can be. So economic factors, and I'm useless at budgeting anyway. So the fact that he had learning difficulties and he was using pot, my limited budgeting skill meant that I was a tiny bit of help for him, because it's the only budgeting skill I've got, a tiny bit. Homelessness, obviously, with economic factors comes homelessness problems. We might have to refer somebody to homeless services. Connections with poverty, homelessness, and mental illness, very, very strong, because for a lot of people of many ages, from like young adults to middle age, it's easier to live in a tent permanently in some public place than it is to deal with Centrelink and phones and trying to get on the internet when you can't get signal and you haven't got a job, so you can't necessarily look for work. It's just easy to live in a tent, which means if they're not wanting to find any permanent accommodation, then obviously we can't force them to do that. We can help them as much as we can help them as much as we can, as much as is reasonable, as much as they want us to. So eventually there's a limit that we're only going as far as they want us to. So chronic disease, or not necessarily chronic disease, but could be chronic pain or chronic disorders, like the amount of people with chronic back pain, whether it's like up in the lower neck or whether it's all the way back down bottom of the spine, the amount of people that are going through enduring chronic pain it's a crazy amount of statistics. So with chronic pain, obviously comes chronic medication taking. If it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be very severe before a doctor is going to prescribe somebody with quite intense painkiller. Like you don't have to be enduring heavy pain for too long or for a long period of time before things like endone and things and medication that people really shouldn't be taking for a long period of time. And they start to get OxyContin, things like that. They start to show with the client, and that's another complex issue that they're bringing in with severe pain and some severe painkillers. That's not to mention the cancer and arthritis, obviously. Disability, a wide range of physical and mental conditions, can limit a person's functioning. We shouldn't be judging, we shouldn't be prejudging and expecting that because we think somebody's got a disability that they won't be able to do that, or completely the opposite. People might come in and mention that they've got disability, and if we assume and get it wrong, then we could repel somebody from the service rather than inviting them in. And just because we can't see somebody's disability doesn't mean that it's less significant than another person's. So, like it describes there, a wide range of physical and mental conditions that can limit a person's functioning and capacity. So, when it's limiting a person's functioning, then they're at a disadvantage straight away. So quite often we might be working in mental health and we could be working to support somebody's recovery from chronic disorder or disability in whatever way. We're not doing the research. I'll give you this link. Social disability. It's not very long. Put it in the chat again. It's only 3 minutes long. That didn't work. There you go. 3 minutes. So we'll come back when we've watched this. All right. So with any community services clients, it's the same model, the same theory, really. The disability, aged, A or D, mental health, they're not necessarily broken, and we need to fix them, because it's client's autonomy that's what we're working with. We're only working to the parameters that they're wanting to work. So it's not that they're coming to us to get fixed. No, they're coming to us for support in whatever way they're wanting to focus on. So just like somebody with a disability isn't necessarily wanted to come and have us fix their problems, and somebody struggling with their AOD issues isn't necessarily wanting to stop using. They're wanting to come to us for a specific resource, a referral system, or support with sorting their life around and managing it. People with mental health issues, they might not necessarily be trying to get rid of all the problems. They might just be literally wanting some support in navigating all of the complexity, really. So we've got to figure out what it is that the person's wanting. With other contributing factors, just got here, education as well. Mental illness can have a negative impact on the person's ability to engage in education at all levels, quite often, with a social kind of focus. People can pull back from certain areas and pull back from society and pull back from relationships because they're struggling. Then with the justice system as well, people with mental illnesses may experience difficulties when they encounter the criminal justice system. It doesn't take long before, if we put all of them factors together, there's going to be quite a lot of people with maybe economic, homelessness, education, mental health, justice system problems, all racked up together, and maybe aged care, or maybe they're a young person, maybe they've got a disability as well. And every person that's got a lot of factors like that, they're all going to be different, and there's going to be a different priority with each one. Quite often, they're going to tell us what the priority is, or they're going to advise us what they want us to work on. But sometimes maybe a GP has sent them and said, this is the thing, this is their priority, this is what they need to work on. When somebody's been mandated by the justice system, they've been sent to work with a mental health agency, and this is what they need to work on. It's difficult because we might slightly disagree and think, yeah, all right, this is what the justice system's saying, this is what the courts or the police are saying that you have to work on. But I reckon maybe whether it's relationships or whether it's trauma or whether it's mental health issues, this is what I'd like to work on. So quite often you might be ticking things off for the court system, but actually getting them referred to other places that are really going to help them. And it's navigating everything. We don't need another bit. Or more research. So family and domestic violence, there's a specific module that goes alongside this, like a more intense module of a few weeks. There's in all the assessments, I think it registers seven strands of family domestic violence. And I can't pick them all off my head, but there's quite a few, and I'm sure it's usually always 7 that it'll point to. It'll be in the learner guide for that assessment anyway. But we're looking at physical harm, emotional and psychological abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse, social abuse, sexual abuse, stalking, spiritual or cultural abuse. That kind of narrows it down to all of them. I mean, yeah, there's 7 there. You could bring in other names like gaslighting, or there's a couple of other for financial as well. Can't think off the top of my head, but there'll be other slightly different names for them. But that's 7. So it's a good reminder for those 7. With child protection as well, linked to mental health issues, obviously. If a young person is affected by family AOD issues or family mental health issues or any of the other complex issues, if a child is going through that, it's going to be almost impossible for them to come out without any mental health issues of their own, or even without any of the similar issues of their own, whether that's learned behavior or whether that's genetic mental health issues passed on, or whether that's they've seen family been abusive, so they're going to get angry and act in a very similar way, or they've seen parents using substances, whether it's alcohol or anything else, and they copy that. Whatever the reason, a young person is at high risk of repeating the same thing, which is one reason that we need to jump in if we need to. So experiencing abuse, etc., can result in trauma and consequent mental illness in later life. There is massive study on ACEs. That's in a slightly different module, but they're called adverse childhood experiences. And when any of us undergo some sort of traumatic experience that any adult would face, then it could be a limited trauma in some ways. But then for a child to go through the same thing is going to be really traumatic for them later in life. So that's one of the things we've got to look out for: adverse childhood experiences. And there's a lot of psychologists done studies on that what they experience in the first few years of their life will come back to haunt them, unfortunately, if they haven't got support and they haven't got help. So with grief and loss as a separate thing, I'll just get rid of that. Hold on. So we typically talk about grief and loss with human death, but anything that we are strongly attached to, we can endure grief or loss because of it. And it's kind of a some people would not assume that grief and loss can happen if nobody's died. But then it doesn't take much before, if somebody's got a family pet or a strong connection to a pet and a pet dies, people are going to think it's superficial if somebody's mourning or grief and loss over a pet that's passed away. But that's still a serious thing, that somebody can literally go through the same kind of grief or loss because a pet's died. Or even the rest of us, when we get rid of that, when we sell that car on that we've had for 15 years, or we can't sell it on because it's not sellable anymore and it has to go to the scrappy. A few tears over that is legitimate. It's unfortunate. Or you've been living in the same home for 10, 15 years, or you've been living in the same area and you have to move out. All of these things can cause intense grief and loss. And that's just under a normal circumstance for an adult. So grief and loss being a normal response to the loss of anything significant in our lives. It's more than simply feeling sad. It can affect a person's whole being. Everything, and when it says a whole being, it's the whole holistic, sort of a negative holistic thing there that affects their mental health, their physical health, their social health. Um, all of their personality can change because of what's happened. So grief can affect the person's mental health. The whole being. And that's just talking about a typical adult. If we move that on to somebody that's moving grief and loss onto somebody that's like a young person or a senior citizen, or somebody that's cognitive impairment, they're going to deal with it in a massively different way. So torture and trauma, obviously, there's specific definitions of this. Like torture, somebody's undergone this like in another country or even in this country. Not as much in this country, but in another country it could be more common, and then they've come to this country to seek refuge or asylum, then we are still dealing with it and we're trying to help with whatever we can. So refugees and migrants who have escaped traumatic situations, whether that can be an abusive relationship, is in this category, definitely. They've seen the loved ones tortured as well. In this category, young people, children in the home, seeing abusive parents. This is what we're talking about. And then alcohol and other drugs. Practice and policy must be evidence-based. So when we're working with AOD issues, it's exactly the same as working with disability or young people or aged care. There's a way we work that is evidence-based, based on thousands and thousands of other caseworkers that have been working in that area for however many years. So there's a certain way to work with AOD issues, as there is a certain way to work with mental health issues. Quite often it's very similar, but it depends what we're focusing on most of all. So ensure a continuity of care and use a range of approaches. Continuity of care meaning that they might disappear off our radar for a while and then they come back. And we can't force somebody to stay in, same with mental health, we can't force somebody to stay in our service and force somebody to work with us. If they choose to go and they choose to disappear off the radar for a few weeks or a few months, that's their prerogative. And then they come back, seek support again. And then we quite often pick up where we left off. Or because of the lack of connection, we might have to go back a bit, and it sometimes feels like it's one step forward and two steps back because there's no continuity there. But our connection has to be a continuity of care, or we could be passing them on to somebody else. If we know that they're leaving the area, then we could pass them on to another agency that can still work with them. So we've got to recognize and respond to diversity, whatever diversity looks like, whether it's gender, race, the substance that they're using, the age, whatever the diverse type, then we're working with that, not against it, and ensure the workforce is qualified. So just with our own scope of practice, we wouldn't be jumping in to work with anybody, or we wouldn't be pushing anybody to work with anybody with mental health issues if we knew they weren't appropriately qualified or it wasn't in their scope of practice area. We equally wouldn't push anybody to work with an AOD client if it wasn't something that they'd done at all, ever. We could pair them up with somebody and help them get experience, but really we've got to make sure that the staff are working with the clients that they're known to work with. I'll give you this link, but I was wanting to rush through, get a few things done before break. So this one, the National Drug Strategy Household. This is so big. It takes more than a little video for a couple of minutes to understand it all. It's fascinating if you're a bit of a geek like me. Looking at there was a survey in 2019, this one, and then there was another one a couple of years later, just after COVID. And then there was one in 2010 as well. So when you compare all them stats and look at mental health and what it's connected with, whether it's age or whether it's AOD issues, it's fascinating if you like that sort of thing. So gambling as well. When people are working in AOD issues, they'll usually be working with gambling as well, because when we say AOD, the alcohol and drugs is connecting with a chemical in our brain, dopamine, that is sending signals through the body. So we're addicted to the dopamine hit, whether it's whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, whether it's sugar, it's hitting the dopamine in our brain, but then so is gambling, and gambling comes into the AOD sector. So the people that are working with clients with AOD issues, gambling falls straight in there. With gambling, with all of the issues, they're always linked. There's always like another one to connect with them. So it might be alcohol and tobacco. It could be tobacco and pot. It could be gambling and alcohol, or gambling, alcohol and tobacco. Quite often it's never pot and alcohol. A lot of pot users have seen, I don't know why, a lot of pot users have seen family members derail their lives with alcohol, and they're choosing to stay away from the alcohol, and then find pot and think that at least I'm not using alcohol because it's messed up too many people's lives. So a lot of things are connected and paired. And so it might be stimulants and benzos to try and stabilize life. So a significant social problem in Australia. Addiction to gambling may be seen as a mental illness. Though it's linked with mental illness and other AOD issues. Treatments can include cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, ironically, is one of the key therapies that help somebody with alcoholism. So it seems counterintuitive. It seems crazy that it can help, because alcohol is an addictive substance. Once it's got its hooks into your brain and your nervous system, it's not that we get addicted to it, it hooks into us. And cognitive behavior therapy, which helps look at behavior, emotions, and thinking, and trying to reorganize them so that we're thinking slightly different, so that we're feeling slightly different, and so that we act slightly different. And that actually reduces the negative lifestyle of alcoholism. And it's, for some people that don't understand, or some people that hear about it secondhand, it's almost as if you're saying, well, if you just think differently, you'll be able to get rid of alcoholism. And that's not what it is, completely wrong. But it's brain restructuring so that a lifestyle change can happen. So cognitive behavioral therapy, like gambling, obviously gambling doesn't have the hook into us like alcohol does. Gambling is us getting hooked on the dopamine and the lights and the sounds and the rush, which is how it happens. Just wanted to leave it there for a while for the slides, because I was wanting to look at the, there's only 2 assessments for this. So the main things were there's no homework. That H word, let's not look at that. You've got enough assessments to do. Contributing factors for complexity. So as it said on the training website, complexity being all the different things that are connecting together. The contributing factors could be so many different things. Actually, before I look at these assessments, I was wanting to do another shout out kind of offer for other role plays that need doing or that you might need to do. Because as well as you, there's the diploma of AOD, the diploma of alcohol and other drugs, and they're doing these two assessments as well. So there's a lot of people doing them. If you can't find people to do these role plays, there's plenty of people there that are wanting to do them. So this one, you don't need a staff member. There's been some confusion about it with me. You don't need a staff member to do this. You just need another person. This is, oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Oh, it says this is an assessor-led role play. So I didn't want to look at this one first. I wanted to look at this one first. So we did this module a few weeks ago, maybe March or April. So you don't need an assessor. You can use somebody, a staff member from HADA if you want, but you could get this done with you and a friend if you wanted to, because it's like when you're at work and you've got your annual review and you're going for pay rise and you've done amazing, another 12 months, so you're going to get heaps more money. This is the type of thing that it's looking at. So it's literally just you and your boss, and you've got to get somebody to play your boss. And that's the way it is. There's a bit of paperwork to do, a client feedback form, and then there is also the two-way feedback template. So there's two documents to do. I'll give you, if you haven't seen them, I'll show you them. So this is what you've got to fill in before the role play. This would be like before you go in for the professional development review, like before you go in for the meeting to ask for a pay rise. You are Justin Hawthorne, and you're going in to see Monica Ernest, your boss. And there's been a client, one of your clients has made a couple of complaints, and in that meeting, you've got to reply to some of the complaints that have been made. If you didn't do this module, it's CHCMHS010 If you haven't done that one, don't worry about this one yet. But we did it a few weeks ago, so it's there. And then once you've done that one, then you do the role play with this kind of professional development paperwork. So things you perform well, based on Justin. It's based on Justin and his client feedback form that he was just talking about. So things you perform well, things that you need to look at for areas of improvement, and feedback from supervisor. So that's that one, PRP 003. So there was some confusion that it needed an assessor. You don't need anybody else to do that. This is the only one really that you need a staff member from HADA, like me or anybody, to do that. If you want to have this ready, we can do it on a Thursday evening, not necessarily in class time, but we could get it done in class time if there's loads of people needing to do it. It's three parts, three parts. So there's Lee, there's Sujin, and there's Justin. So the three people. This is the only bit that you need a staff member for. So you, Lee and Joy. Joy is the client. You're Lee, and you're going to tick through these areas to look at with the client. It's usually 10 minutes. It's usually a 10-minute role play. And you just got to work through these. And it's the same task for Sujin and Justin. So we still got to do the same things. So you've got 3 role plays to do, but one of them has got to be with the HADA staff, like me or somebody else. And I'm only mentioning it because some people might be going on placement soon, or they might be finishing their diploma soon. And if this is still outstanding, it's going to be difficult to pull together because you need somebody from the HADA to work with. That's it for that one. Oh, and it's break time. So that's it. We'll come back after break. Oh, sorry. Whoops. Go for it, Priyanka. Everybody else, go for your break if you want. Yes, Priyanka.
Hey, Dwayne.
Hi.
I vaguely remembered that Chayan told someone that for this one, they can do it without assessor even.
Oh, that would be awesome, because you've got a placement that we can see all this. But I'll check on that. That would
Yeah.
be fantastic.
Yeah, please check it.
Yeah, obviously, if you do need somebody from HADA, that's definitely there. That's always there as an offer. But it would be great if you didn't need, because that would be the only one, I think. That would be the only one for the diploma that that did need one. Sorry. So that would mean that you wouldn't have any that you need a staff member for. That would be great.
Yeah. So please tell me, like, when it says this one is SSL-led role play, you still need someone to play the role of client, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. When it's assessor-led.
So what's the role which assessor is playing?
So the assessor, yeah. Well, so who is that? Oh, that's Caroline. Yeah. So yes, you do need somebody else so that you can have. It's all right, Caroline. Don't stress. So the assessor would normally come in and record the role play between you and the client, and that's normally the way we work. But I and plenty of other people can be the client. So when it says assessor-led role play, that I could come in and be the client for somebody, and then you upload it, but then I wouldn't be able to mark it because I'm in the role play, so I'm not allowed to mark it like that, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. So does it mean the assessor will be playing the role of the client, or assessor will be just
Yes,
watching and my friend will be playing the role of the client?
it would be either or. So
Okay.
if you get a staff member to be the client, then the staff member can't be the assessor. Like that's a legal thing that we're not allowed to do that. But if you and Aileen's here, or you and Caroline, if you and Caroline did the role play, I would have to be there. That's the thing that it's focusing on. I have to be there. I would record it. I would give you the recording, and then I could assess it as well because I'm not in the role play. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the benefit of doing that?
It means that on the one hand, it makes you more stressed because
Okay.
there's an assessor. unfortunately. But no, it's not meant to do that. It's meant to just, for our benefit, when we say to the auditors, yeah, some of the role plays that you've done, we've actually been there to verify that, yes, first of all, it was Caroline, it was Priyanka doing the role play, and it wasn't somebody else with your ID, which might have happened before. It was also legitimately done, and we were there to make sure it ran smoothly, and all of this tick list was all completed properly. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
That type of thing, really.
Okay.
All right, we'll have a break. We'll come back in 10 minutes. All right, just a few of the things to do. So bearing in mind that this is 2 weeks, 2 sessions for this module. We've done most of that. And there's like things that the industry wants us to cover, and then there's the assessments that we cover, and we mesh them together and we try and get everything that you need in the learning guide in the module. So there'll be stuff in the learning guide that isn't in the assessment, because there's only 2 assessments. Some people will have finished both assessments for this module because they're fairly straightforward. So bearing in mind that we've looked at, like in chapter 1, definitions of recovery and recovery-oriented principles. In chapter 2, we've looked at mental health legislation. We've looked at complexity. We've looked at some therapies, mentioned cognitive behavior there. Other significant therapy like dialectical behavior therapy and acceptance commitment therapy. The other options, they don't work the same, but focus in one as an example that I mentioned earlier. That's a key one. We haven't mentioned motivational interviewing at all, really. We've mentioned it heaps in another module. So also finally communication. Haven't really looked at this one, but then like we've said, this crops up in another in plenty of other modules, looking at communication, cultural safety, counseling skills there, active listening, paraphrasing, summarizing, all the different styles there. So that's the learning guide for this module. And as I said, if you only need it predominantly for the assessments, which we've looked at the questions here, and this case study, 3-section case study as well. Name the characteristics of a holistic and person-centered approach. Name one way the local best practice frameworks inform planning process. Name 3 different types of planning options or tools that can be used in a collaborative planning process. It's a little bit more detailed than the quiz, than the written questions. But when we're looking at the detail that's needed, it's always wanting a little bit more because it's a case study. Just to bear that in mind. So when it says name 3 effective communication skills with which you should be familiar, it's not just active listening, summarizing, paraphrasing, if you wanted to use them. It's not just stating them, it's 1 or 2 sentences just to show that you know what they mean and you haven't just taken them names from the learner guide or from Google. Then 2 ways to focus on people's strengths. I don't know whether that's, I'm sorry, my eyes are really bad. I don't know whether that says Dilke or Daiki. Daiki is 52 years old. He has told us he always feels unhappy. Even as a child, he worked as a school bus driver for 16 years. That didn't make sense in my head. He always felt happy, even as a child. He worked as a bus driver for 16 years and loved his job. He didn't do that when he was a child. He had long felt that his relationships with others and his love life were very intense. In 1990, he was first diagnosed with manic depression. That's quite an old term now. It's not called manic depression anymore. By most of healthcare, it's bipolar. It means the same thing. So that 1 minute that you're really, really excited and you're really friendly and really hyper elevated on an extreme one way, and then there's 2 types, and the next episode might mean that you are literally depressed, and now it's called bipolar. He felt relieved. He took lithium for 4 years, which stabilized his mood. Over the last 5 years, he has been hospitalized 3 times. He now has access to a transition house where he lives alone in a studio apartment. He's been followed up by a psychiatrist, a social worker, and several support workers in community organizations. Daiki feels he is better and he will soon be able to go back to work. I feel I've recovered. I'm a lot better now. He still needs the support of his care providers. He has re-established contact with his family. He considers that he is recovering because he is able to find the discipline to go to his appointments and his craft and photography workshops and to take his medication. He also uses breathing techniques and prayer. So on that, you need to answer what is one goal method that you can use with people collaboratively when you're working with them and sometimes other agencies as well. What are 2 ways to promote people's self-advocacy? So how could you help, what was his name? Daiki. What are 2 ways you could promote Daiki's self-advocacy, trying to advocate for himself and try and take control of his own life? Not that we step back, but that we empower him to take control of his life again. Name 2 strategies that you can use to support people's goal to transition beyond the service. And that is almost stepping back as they take over a little bit of their own life. So that's the 2 assessments. I'm sure a lot of people might have finished them. With the next module that was looking at trauma-informed care, there's still just 2 assessments again, very similar. You've got a quiz. Don't know how many questions there are. And then you've got a case study project thing for that as well. That's 2 weeks long, that module. And then there's a bigger module. So we'll be looking at starting in middle of June. There's a 3-week module that you've got a role play for at the end of June. All good. Book's gone. We've got very little else to do because that's it. Has anyone got any questions about anything?